Hello and welcome to In Touch with Durham County. I'm Deborah Craig Ray, General Manager of Strategic Planning and Innovation. Joining me is our co-host, Wendy Jacobs, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you, Deborah. We use this show to share vital information about the wonderful programs and services provided by Durham County government.
Today we are speaking with George K. Quick, our County Chief Financial Officer, who retires at the end of the year, and Susan F. Tezai, who will step in as CFO. We've just celebrated National Adoption Month. We've invited Janice Williams, Adoption Supervisor, and Deborah Cousin, Foster Care Parent Recruiter from Durham County Social Services, to talk about pairing loving families and children in need of good homes. Chair Jacobs, let's begin our conversation.
Thank you, Deborah. And George and Susan, thank you for being here with us today. And George, we are all very saddened to hear about your retirement. And Susan, congratulations that you will be our new Chief Financial Officer. So we are have mixed emotions with us here today, but congratulations for your retirement as well. And George, tell us, how long have you been with Durham County government?
I started at the beginning of fiscal year 2002, so that puts me right at a little more than 16 years, probably about 16 and a half years when I retire at the end of the month of December.
And I'm sure that time has flown by.
It really has. When you're working with good people, it makes life easy and time really does fly.
Well, we have, I know personally, I have really appreciated working with you, and I have always felt very confident about Durham County finances with you as our director, and Susan with you as the deputy director. And so I know we will be in good hands with Susan as your mentee all of these years working with you. So tell us, George, how is Durham County doing financially?
Well, I'd like to think that Durham County at this point in time is probably in the best financial shape that it's ever been in. Back in 2002 when I joined, we had a fund balance that was in single digits. That is 9%. Today it's a little bit more than 36%, which represents significant growth and has allowed us to move our credit rating, rather not move but maintain our AAA credit rating, but essentially move our status from probably what I would call the lower third to the upper third quartile when you compare us to other counties throughout the United States.
So we're very proud of that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So what kind of services does the finance department actually provide for Durham County government?
Well, under the finance department, we handle several areas. I guess the most critical one to everybody is payroll.
Yes.
We manage the payroll department. The other area that I think is important to external people is the accounts payable area. All of the bills that are paid through my area. In addition to that, we provide all of the accounting that's done of all of the funds, and to some degree even monitor the budget, but we are not the budget department. We also have purchasing, which is in charge of acquiring all of the items and contracting with outside vendors, doing RFPs and what have you. That comes under the finance area. So those are the basic services that we provide, and I think we've managed to improve on everything and just keep everything in the middle of the road and out of the ditch, as one would say.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. I know you briefly mentioned budget, and a lot of people kind of get confused. They do think that finance is our budget department, but explain that difference.
Well, the budget essentially takes the proposed revenues or the projected revenues that we expect to generate during the year and divide those revenues up among the various departments within the county. Well, once all of that is done, then they start to spend the money. And as they spend it, it comes under my department. And we monitor how it is spent, make sure that it is posted or accounted for in the various categories that need to be, so that we can maintain or monitor the impact that this has on our overall financial position. But there really are two different departments. I think we are more long-term financial effect, while the budget is more of an annual thing, how we do it today, what have you.
Yeah. So, what are some of the accomplishments you're most proud of?
Well, I like to think that we've changed the way in which business is done in Durham. One of the biggest things that I think we did is, coming from a banking background, one of the things that we would normally do when financing capital projects, we would use short-term borrowings to fund the capital project. And then once the project was complete, then you would put long-term financing into effect. And one of the problems that the county has had, not only our county, but all, is that our way of issuing debt, you issue all of the money and then you start on the project and spend it down. But during that process, you are paying for it, and you're paying for it at a higher rate. And in many instances, you have money that you are paying interest on that's just sitting in the bank. And you, in many instances, you end up with arbitrage. That is a term where we're limited in how much interest income you can make off of the money while it is not being used. And in times when rates are, I'll say, out of balance, you can end up paying more for it than you can earn on it. So there's an imbalance there. So what we did was to come up with a way of issuing short-term variable rate debt that's at a substantially lower rate. An example would be that, say, on the courthouse that we built, we ended up paying, I guess, an overall interest rate of less than 1% on all of that money. But when we got ready to put long-term financing on it, those rates were somewhere around 3%. So when you're talking about that differential on $125 million, it makes for a big change. So we, by issuing the short-term debt, spending all of the money, and then coming back and issuing the long-term debt, then we were able to be a lot more efficient in the way in which we finance projects. And that was something that I like to take credit for, because the design of that was my idea. And as a result of it, that's the way things are being financed throughout North Carolina now. Another thing that we did is we issue a lot of debt, and we do it on a fixed rate basis. And there are people out in the marketplace that cannot stand a movement in the interest rate, and they want to use the fixed rate portion. And we had have a limited amount of variable rate debt, and we could stand. So we did what is called an interest rate swap over some bonds that we had, and that interest rate swap was done back in 2005. And over that period of time, we've generated almost $30 million in savings, or to the tune of about a little over $3 million a year. And that's just about a penny on the tax rate. So just by doing that transaction, we've been able to keep our tax rate down a penny. So those are things that, and that particular swap is still paying as we sit here. So those are just two of the things that we did that I think have made a major difference in our debt service and allowed us to do some other things that we may not have been able to do if it weren't for those changes.
Thank you, George. You really articulated some really complex concepts financially, but I think as a reflection, I hope our listeners will appreciate the fact that you have saved Durham County a lot of money and the taxpayers a lot of money, and you brought some really innovative strategies, and we're really grateful for that. And I'd like to know what you think of our new CFO.
Well, I would tell you that our new CFO is somebody that I highly respect, and I did a lot of mentoring and prompting to make sure that we brought her into this position. She is somebody that has really supported me, and when you have a team, I think a good team, you have people that have skills that others don't have. When I came to the county, I was not an accountant. I'm a finance person. And my financial background allowed me to do some of the things that we've just mentioned. But it is the accounting side of it that keeps everything in order and lets us know where we are and what we need to do. And that has been done by Susan. And she's educated me, and I've tried to educate her in the financial side of it. And I think we've been a good team, and I would expect that if you think I did something, you wait until she gets in there.
Well, Susan, how you think you're going to fill that void left by George?
Well, it's not going to be an easy task because, as we've just discussed, George he's raised the bar. So, but I have over 30 years in government, in finance, and over 16 of that has been with George. And he's been a great mentor. He's a great leader, great manager. So I know that I've grown over those 16 years under him, working on him as his deputy. And most of my time has been here with Durham County. I've been here since '93. So I'm going to do my best.
So do you think we're going to see any changes with you at the helm?
Well, anytime you have a change in management, there are going to be some shifting of responsibilities. I don't see anything major, but there will be some shifting to make sure everything's in alignment. As I transition, I still call it George's position, but to the CFO position. There'll be some, but nothing major, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. Anything you'd like to add?
Just that it's been an honor to serve as his deputy. And
Well, I like to say that I really have enjoyed this. This is, I guess, the third career. I spent some time in the military, then I spent some time in banking. But this has really been the most enjoyable area that I've worked in. And, I'll give the commissioners a compliment in that they really have allowed me to expand and try some new and different things. And we've been lucky they've worked out. Some of the things that we've done very well could have gone in the other direction. But I think through our careful study and what have you, we've been able to make things work well, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, you've been a great steward of our funds, and I know we're all going to miss you, but we certainly wish you well. And Susan, we welcome you because we know you do an excellent job, and we look forward to working with you.
Yeah, thank you very much on behalf of the County Commissioners and Durham County government. We really appreciate your service to our community.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk adoption. Stay with us.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back. Janice G. Williams, Adoption Supervisor, and Deborah Cousin, Foster Care Parent Recruiter, join us from Durham County Social Services. Commissioner Jacobs, let's continue our show.
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Deborah and Janice, for being with us here today to talk about adoption opportunities here in Durham County. How many children do we have eligible for adoption right now? What are their ages? Can you tell us about that?
We have approximately 40 children. The reason I say 40 is because we never know. They had court today, so we might have more. But we have 40 children legally free. They range from 20 months old to 17.
Wow. So there's definitely a great need and a great opportunity for people in our community. And what are the requirements for somebody to be an adoptive parent? I'm sure we have listeners out there who may be interested.
We have very similar requirements to be approved prospective adoptive parents as we have for licensed foster parents. So they must take the same training and orientation. They must submit to criminal background checks. They have to have enough money to meet their own needs, because anyone out there who's a parent knows that children do cost quite a bit. So we don't want them to start out already in the negative big time. We also will have someone meet with them one-on-one once they finish the classes, which we call MAP, M-A-P-P, for Model Approach to Partnerships and Parenting. And once they finish that, an adoption worker will work with them one-on-one to complete what we call an adoptive home study.
Okay, so you've just laid out, how the requirements, and how long is that whole process then from start to finish?
Just to get approved.
So first you go through the process to be approved to be an adoptive parent. How long does that generally take?
Anywhere from 6 to 8 months.
Wow. And then once you go through that, then how long does it take to actually do the adoption process?
So the adoption process to me means the legal process. It means you already have your child. So I'd like to back up just a second and say, actually having a child placed in your home for the purpose of adoption can take just as long as it takes you to become pregnant and have your own. We don't know. There's no guarantee that it's immediate. So anywhere from a few months to a few years is the experience that our parents have and our observations. But the legal process actually takes approximately 5 to 6 months.
And can you do that simultaneously or not? You do one and then the other?
But the placement to make sure everything's going to be working out, we're very interested in making sure it's a successful experience for the child and the families.
So generally, what's the difference between the process if you're trying to adopt an infant versus a preteen or a child in between? How do those processes differ?
The process really is the same. If I were to list the steps, it would be the same. What's different is that teen comes with a history, and having to learn that history, and in that history having to learn that child's strengths and that child's needs, and then making sure that the parents have the strengths that can meet those needs. And so that takes some observation. The infants, many of our infants are adopted by the foster parents who take them in, so that they've already done all the work for us by then.
Gotcha. So is there some special preparation available for adoptive parents. I heard you talk about MAP, I think.
That's Deborah's.
Durham County offers 30 hours of training that's free of charge. It goes over training our foster parents and adoptive parents on the trauma that the children have gone through just by being taken into care. It also goes over 12 successful skills to help you become a successful foster parent, such as being able to communicate with Durham Public Schools, being able to communicate with the social worker, being able to identify the child's strengths, being able to identify their needs to help build on those strengths and needs. We want you to be fully equipped before you say, yes, this is something I can do.
Right. So it sounds, I mean, it's great to know this is a free class, 30 hours that we offer, and seeing the relationship between the fostering and the adoption program. Can you tell us about some recent success stories with adoption?
Certainly. We, in September, were successful in finalizing a 17-year-old in her adoptive home just a few days before she turned 18. So you can imagine we were working on that for a few months. We did not have the 6 months we would have liked. We had about 3 months. So it took some coordination and work with the attorneys because we do not do the legal paperwork. We ask our families to identify attorneys who can do that for them. So we have a brother who was adopted. So most people are more comfortable, I want to say it like that, and more sure that they can successfully parent a younger child. So we had a brother that was several years younger than his sister. His sister was a teenager, and the family was very comfortable taking the brother and adopted him. And the sister would come and visit, and as they got to know her, they learned that her needs really weren't as great as they initially thought. And they actually reached out and said, you know what, we want to adopt his sister. And I think those are two things that have happened this year. And one in general is, as you know, I go to Wendy, I go to you a lot. So as you know, we have sibling groups, a number of sibling groups. We do not tend to have mostly single children. And we've actually had 4 sibling groups of 3 or more adopted in the last 12 months. So we have some very generous people out there, people who have just big hearts and who are willing to do the tough work to learn how to manage and discipline and take care of lots of children.
Right. Well, I think this is something that we probably all have our own stories. I was just Thanksgiving with my family. We have 5 adopted children within my family, nieces and nephews. So it's really the most wonderful thing that you can do, and I've certainly experienced it myself, how they become a gift to your family. But there are challenges, and so what can you tell us about what are some of the resources to parents who have adopted that we offer to support them when they do have challenges?
A number of years ago, the state mandated that if you were a licensed adoption agency, public or private, you had to provide post-adoption services. Now, post-adoption services are not mandated for us to provide, but mandated for the parents to accept it. So it's a service that we provide that if the families say they want to, they just give us an inkling that they want to. We call them, we reach out to them to try to help them. We provide supportive counseling referral information. There are a number of the same resources for mental health, for medical needs, for emotional needs that were open to them even while the children were in our custody. And we don't have enough of them, I'd like to say that, so that we could get more. And becoming experts in the trauma that the children suffer, and that we as even adults have that secondary trauma and trying to help and deal with it, is new enough that we just need more and more people who can do trauma-focused therapy, and can work with the families intensely in helping them understand what's going on.
Now, given the amount of years that you've been in this wonderful work, how have you seen trends and things change over the years?
My experience, I think I shared with you and our PR person earlier. My first adoption through foster care was in 1982. Since then, the adoption process itself has gotten a lot shorter. It used to be more than a year that you had to from petition to the final decree. We do have more resources, but one of the heartwarming things that has really changed is that people no longer think they only should adopt babies. We have been successful in placing all ages, all groups. But people used to say, when I started in 82, 3, oh, that's too old.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to add to that, because of the training, the potential adoptive parents have been able to meet teens. So that helps that fear of fostering or adopting a teen. We get told in the middle of class that, hey, I wanted to start off with a baby, but now I'm willing to take a teen.
Yeah. Wow. That's
It's good to
wonderful.
see that
Yeah, Deborah, make
transformation.
sure you have teens in your panel
Oh,
for
yes.
panel night.
Good, good. So if you could think of something that might make it a little easier to process all of this and get people involved, is there anything you wanted to share?
I would like to say that we have so many children, over 280 children that have been abused and neglected. If you meet these children, they tear at your heart. You really want to help. And it's my duty to make sure I get out in the public and let people know we need you to be either a foster or adoptive parent. They just need either a temporary home or a permanent home just to be there. And we need people that's going to step up and try to show them skills, not just send them to a bedroom. We need people that really want to spend quality time. And that's my passion, to make sure I spend time with these people and try to find resources to help them. Anything that they may need, we want them to be able to communicate it to Durham County, not be afraid, and we try to help them.
Excellent.
Well, we appreciate the work that both of you do. You're great advocates for our foster care and adoption programs, and we really appreciate the work that you do every day. And I know that you try to be supportive, and you recently had an event at Frankie's. If you could tell us about that event for the families.
That we had an event. We had, I would say, it was hard to keep count.
Oh, yeah.
We have right at 200 people come. Yes, and Frankie's is already big and loud, and they just had a ball. The children don't have to sit down and be quiet for 30 minutes or an hour. They can just have fun. And so we get lots of compliments.
Yeah, well, we'd like to thank you both for the great work that you do for our community. And we've had a wonderful show.
We have.
From all of us at Durham County Government, happy holidays.
Happy holidays.